evening. Welcome to the November 21 meeting of the Avon, Connecticut Board of Education. I call the meeting to order, and first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Shoot, would you do us the honors?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is we have the Avon Achievers. Who's going to be doing the presentations on behalf of Thompson Brook? All right, come forward, and I believe Ken Burke is also going to be assisting you.
The first three people I'd like to call up is Chris Bennell, Chris Melnick, and Lee Goodrow. They come forward, please. We're recognizing these three educators for the work they've done, not just this year, but also throughout their careers, both in Avon and in other districts as well. Because of some staff reductions and one retirement last year, had to reshuffle some teams and some teaching assignments, and so these three people were working together for the very first time. They each very well valued in the teams that they were on previously, and thought it would be a good combination, and it worked out much better than I had dreamed it would. I'd love to say it was leadership, but it wasn't. It was the individual work on their part. Much of what I could share is confidential, so I don't want to get into that. I just want to suffice it to say that they've reached the needs of a lot of different students in a lot of different situations this year through their teamwork and working together. So on behalf of everyone at Thompson Brook, I present three of our four Avon Achievers this evening. Give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Our next Avon Achiever is Cindy Nelson. She comes forward. It's rather bittersweet that we have this opportunity to recognize Cindy. She's been a stalwart in the TBS office, certainly bringing a level of professionalism to it at all times. Her varied background, human resource background, executive secretary background. She's traveled all over the country following her husband's jobs as they changed. And unfortunately for us, he landed a key position in their home state of California. It's on December 1st, and he's going to be leaving us physically, but not in spirit, that's for sure. Not only has she been an outstanding support staff within the office, but also really showing genuine school spirit. Whether it's Wear Pink Day, whether it's one of the decades, Dress Like a Particular Decades Day. My all-time favorite was Crazy Hair Day, because well, I'm not in a position to show crazy hair. Those days are long gone for me, but walk in the office and there's Cindy with her crazy hair day. So I imagine tomorrow when it's jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers, will be decked out accordingly just for the school spirit. So Cindy, thank you very much. We appreciate everything that you've done for us and for the children and for the town of Avon and the community of Thompson Brook. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Oh, right. Those people who have come specifically to see the Avon Achiever Awards, this is your chance to escape it. We'll pause in the proceedings slightly, and judging by the number of people getting up, that we're losing some significant percentage of our audience, but that's all right.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And don't forget your coats. Yes, you'll remember very quickly. All right. Approval of the minutes. accordance with our usual procedure, the board, while it notes all the minutes and provides copies of all the minutes, only approves full board minutes. So that is Board of Education regular meeting, October 17, Board of Education special meeting, November 8. Can I have a motion to approve? Can I have a second? All right, so Mr. Shoup moves and Mr. Burke seconded, I think. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Excellent. Communications from the public. And I see none. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, we're done. Information and proposals. I see Ms. Monroe has come in. Are you ready to give us your report?
Yes, I guess. So tonight in Simsbury, there's, well, at 6:30, the football game started, and a lot of people were going, so I guess it's really hyped up. And we had our Veterans Day assembly on last Tuesday?
Monday.
The Tuesday? Monday? Right, yes, because it was on Saturday. So, and that went really well. Everyone was very well behaved, so it went great.
Okay,
And that's all.
excellent. Thank you. Summary of district test results. The assistant superintendent. And Jody Krasansky. All right, I apologize. I didn't read fast enough. And apparently I'm muttering quietly, so now I'll speak a little louder.
Good evening, and first I'd like to thank Jody for joining me this evening. Jody plays a very important role in all of the administration and training for our district assessments, or the state assessments that we administer here in the district. So tonight we're going to share with you the results for all of those assessments in 20 minutes or less.
Should I turn on the watch to time you?
You usually do, so. We're going to start with the CMT Science results for this year. And as you can see in the first chart, we've been charting this data for the last 10 years. And for 2017, when we look at our students that perform at or above goal, our grade 5 scores went up 1%, and our grade 8 scores went up 8%. The exciting thing to look at is if we look at the cohort in 2014, in 5th grade, those are our current 8th graders, and we had a nice gain of 14%. So very pleased with those results. The second chart shows the percent of students by performance level, and for the state goal is level 3, 4, or 5. So only 3% of our 5th graders and 4% of our 8th graders did not make the state goal this year in science. When we look at our district reference groups, or DIRGs as we call them, we compare ourselves to DIRG A and DIRG B. Avon is a member of DIRG B. And you can see that this year, for our comparison with DIRG A schools, for 5th grade we were 8 out of 9, and for grade 5 in DIRG B we were 6 out of 20 in terms of our scores. When we look at grade 8, we were 1 out of 9 in DIRG A and 1 out of 9 in DIRG B. In grade 10, we administer the CAPT. It is similar to CMT, just a different acronym when we move it on up to the high school. Again, we've been charting these areas of growth for the last 10 years. And when you look at our grade 10, we saw a decrease of 9%. 10% of our 10th graders didn't make the state goal this year in science. As we look at the district reference groups, again, DIRG A, we were 5 out of 8, and when we look at DIRG B, we were 11 out of 19. But it's interesting when you look at the drop in percentages. When we're looking at 5th and 8th grade, there were 90s and 80s, but the highest one when we look at the high school level was about 75%. And this shift is a result of the districts as we move toward the next generation science standards, which we will be assessed on in the future. And as we've shifted our content for mastery by the end of 11th grade, because that test will be administered in 11th grade, we have students testing in 10th grade now that have not had necessarily all of that content. And, we're in the same boat pretty much as the other districts. This is the last administration of the CMT and CAPT. The state of Connecticut just recently got their waiver accepted by the State Department of Education, which means we do not need to administer CMT and CAPT this year. That recently came through. They will be moving to the next generation science standards, and we will be doing the field tests, similar to what we did with the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So what that will mean is that our students in 11th grade will participate in this assessment. We as a district and students will not receive any scores or summative data with which to work with, but as a district, we will be required to meet the state participation rates for that assessment. They're not changing that. So as we shift away and kind of sunset CMT and CAPT, obviously we did not spend a lot of time analyzing that data, but feel pretty confident that we're in a good place as we move forward to the next generation science standards. The next assessment that we're going to look at tonight is the Smarter Balance assessment. This is administered in grades 3 through 8, and I'm going to ask Jody if she would share this data with you.
So the Smarter Balance Summative Assessment is the state assessment that's given to students in grades 3 through 8. It's aligned to the Connecticut core standards, so it measures our students' performance against those standards in both ELA and math, similar to what the Connecticut Mastery Test did. As you see this table, the first table shows the number of students, the percent of students who score at the level 3 or above, which is the goal in the first 3 years of the administration. As we look at the data this way, there's some patterns that kind of emerge. Generally, in grades 3 through 5, we see more variability across cohorts. The same group, for example, from 2015 in grade 3 to grade 4, then grade 5, as well as among grade levels. But what we do notice has been consistent is that our scores level off and they move upward in grades 6 through 8. As we look at state patterns, it's a similar pattern that exists across the state. The next table takes exclusively our 2017 student results in the Smarter Balance assessment and breaks it out amongst the 4 achievement levels. You might note that with the Smarter Balance and all of the assessments moving forward that the state is creating and providing for us, including the Connecticut school SAT test, there's no longer 5 levels of achievement, there's 4. So the goal is still 3, but it's, so students scoring at or above level 3 is the goal, but levels 3 and 4 of the kind of this generation for CMT have been combined. So this shows us the percent of each of those levels in both ELA and math. Again, we're taking a look at ourselves and compared to DIRG A and DIRG B. And whereas I know the tables are small, when you look at the last row of each of these tables, it shows us in perspective to, on the left, the 9 DIRG A schools and where we place ranking against them. And when we look at that for patterns, you don't have 2016s, but as we look at that, we show that in 4 grades, we either stayed at the same place in ranking or increased. And in that case, we went up 2 or 4 places. And in 2 situations, in 2 grades, we went down either 1 place or 5, or as much as 5 places. If you move over to DIRG B, again, from 2016 to 2017, there was a little bit of variability. On 3 grades, we went up as much as 10 places in one instance, if you're looking at, I think it's grade 5, I believe. And then we also, on 3 grades, went down, and the places there varied from 4 places to 8 places. So again, you could see the similar variability with other towns as well, that if you take a look at that. Okay. Again, this is the math chart, and again, amongst DIRG A and DIRG B, we're very competitive as well. In DIRG A, 2 of our grades remain the same. 4 decreased, but it was a minimal of either 1 to 4 places amongst the 9. In DIRG B, we again, went up in one grade, remained the same in 2 grades, and decreased anywhere from 1 to 10 places in 3 grades. However, in both of those situations, I want to kind of go back, not those are slides, but if you go out one more level, so we looked at Avon ourselves, we looked at ourselves compared to Durg A and Durg B, but across the state, for ELA, we're 8th in the state, and for math, we're 9th in the state. And that's when they take account all of our grades together, grades 3 through 8, and our students who are at or above goal. So before we move on to the next assessment, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that the Smarter Balance Assessment is a summative assessment, and it's a way that the state holds accountability for our public schools. But it's also a formative measure, how we use that information to help inform what students need additional supports, or how our curriculum may be working. I want to point out 2 things that we're engaging in this year that the state has continued to advance what they're providing to schools in terms of providing supports and assessment for students. And one of them is they've been working on what's called the growth model. And we'll spend more time talking about the growth model, both to you as a board as well as at our schools and with parents in the future. But they've provided us for the first time with access to what that means in terms of individual student data. So we'll be looking into that this year. That will help us identify ways to again, help students. The other thing that we're doing this year, which is part of the assessment system, and is called the interim assessments. The interim assessments are smaller block assessments, anywhere from 10 to 14 questions on specific content areas that we can use formatively at the classroom to help us along the way. Smarter Balance Assessment is great for kind of that higher level view for stakeholders at the state level, federal level, and district, but it doesn't really help us make decisions in the classroom. And the interim assessments, which are provided through the exact same portal and the same format, allow us to do that. We get instant data on item analysis per student. It's actually a very nice system, and we just started, in our past PD, introduced it to our teachers in grades 3 through 8. So this year, we're going to be doing a minimum of 1 test for every student in ELA and in math at that formative level. And so we'll, as we get to know the system and use it, we hope it to become something very flexible, that it's a tool for teachers and students, and then again help us just meet the needs of our students.
Thank you. The next assessment is the Connecticut SAT School Day Assessment. This is administered in grade 11. And this was the 2nd year of administration of this particular assessment. So in the first box, you can see that between 2016 and 2017 in ELA, we dropped approximately 2% and had an approximate 2% increase in math. So it was just kind of a flip there. So 2016 will become our baseline, and we'll continue to build from that as we move forward with this assessment. When we look at the percent of students by achievement level, those in level 3 and 4 have met or exceeded the goal. In ELA, we had about 12% that didn't make goal and about 21% in math. So overall, our students are responding well in terms of being prepared for college readiness based on this assessment. But we need to continue to focus our energies at the folks that are still scoring in that level 1 and level 2 band. We began that work last year, as you recall, with the student support model here at the high school of how we could support students informally with their dropping in, but more formally where we're assigning them classes. We also created curriculum for specific classes so they have explicit instruction in those areas that we're determining as an area of need that they need to build it. So for example, we have skill courses this year in Algebra 1 and Geometry that supports their regular Algebra 1 and Geometry class. We have a Foundations of Composition course that's in place this year, a critical reading, a structured literacy course, a strategic literacy, and then strategic learning principles. So these are all courses that are explicit instruction to help our students fill those gaps that we have identified, and will continue to work in that area. In terms of the percent of students at or above achievement level 3 compared with our colleagues in Durg A and B, in Durg A, We are 8 out of 8 in English Language Arts and 4 out of 19 in Durg B. When we look at the mathematics, we are 4 out of 8 in Durg A, and we are 1 out of 19 in Durg B for our percentages. When we look statewide, again, as Jody said, to go to that next ring out, we are 14th in the state for English Language Arts and 4th in the state for math with this administration. And finally, you may have noticed in your packet this year some information on the advanced placement courses here at the high school. We have not looked at those formally in the past, so we have provided you with a 5-year overview, which is on page 46 in a little bit larger font than what's up here on the board for you to see this evening. From 2012 to 2014, we held steady with 17 of the same AP courses over that amount of time. In 2015, we added 3 additional courses, economics, government, and psychology, and then last year we added AP Physics too. In that 5-year period, we have gone from 478 students taking an AP class up to 671 with the addition of the new courses. When we compare ourselves with Durg A and Durg B schools in terms of the percentage of exams taken with scores of 3, 4, or 5, we place well at 91% of our students scoring there. As we also look at this data, it made us realize how we should look some more at this data in terms of how many students are enrolling in our AP classes, the student interest in AP classes, are we challenging enough students, how does the early college experience enter in? So in English Language Arts and World Language, when you take the course, you can actually take the AP exam and receive ECE credit for that. Our sciences are scaffolded, so it's either ECE or AP, but we're looking at that blend there also to give students more options as to how they want to pursue that in the end, because the content is not that different at this point in time. So I have spoken with the high school administration and director of counseling about putting together a report, and this was at a request at the board at the end of last year that we'll probably do January, February, where we go over what is advanced placement, what is early college experience, how do those work, what does it mean in terms of transferring credit, the cost involved in all of that, so we will bring forth that information. So in closing, with all of these assessments, our next step really is to continue to look at and analyze the data at the student level, and when we see concerns of students in band 1 or 2, we don't automatically jump to the fact that, okay, the students need remediation, because this is one data point, but it causes us to look at other data points. We have numerous districts, universal screenings that we use in our district. We have other assessments, summative assessments from units. So starting to pull all that data together to determine, if we have students that need some extra support, we put the support in place, we monitor that support to see, is it making a difference and closing the gap? If it is, great, we keep going. If not, we regroup and, try to come up with a different plan. So that is how we'll be using this data. And we'll open it up to you now for questions.
Before I turn it over to other board members, I do have a couple of questions myself. And of course, it's always dangerous for me to ask statistical questions. It does seem as though grades 4, 5, and 6 are, at least in mathematics, not performing as well as I might have expected them to be. I assume we don't know what the standard deviation is for the number of students that perform at or above level 3. So in other words, as the state says, passing. But it looks like it's roughly 10 points, which I don't know if that's a standard deviation worth or not, but it seems like it's a large number of points. Do we have any explanation for that?
They do provide us on the individual student level when they give the scale score to each of the students as earned. They do give a standard error measure that tells them that given this test on any of, 10 other additional times they took this test, there's a plus or minus where they would fall, and so they report their score on that band, and they do demonstrate that for us. So to exactly know what it is based on a grade level where we measure, I'd have to look more closely at that, but I know that at each particular student, we do use that information, and how I reference the growth model is that when a student falls within these 4 achievement levels, they've now taken those 4 achievement levels and said there's a a low level 1 and a high level 1, a low level 2, a high level 2, and so forth, to make 8 bands within those 4. And where you fall in one of those 8 categories gives each child, each individual student, a growth number that we would expect for the next year. And that's how they're looking at student growth, in terms of what % of their growth rate did they make from grade 5 to grade 6. And again, this is just being shared with us at the student level this year, so we're going to be looking more into that. But to go back maybe to what you were noticing about those scores in grades 4, 5, and 6,
Right.
it really
What I'm, just so the board can follow, it's on page 23, I think, of the packet.
and I think if for people in the audience, it's maybe on page 9, slide 9 perhaps, and also is illustrated on maybe slide 12. But across this, maybe it's better on slide 12 maybe, because across the state, you might initially, in our 2016 administration of math, we've always dipped. And so across the board, where we had, the cohort data goes 64, 63, and 69, the range in the state at the same grade level drops as well. And so we're, from the instructional point of view, looking at 2 different things. We're looking at, however, it also then rebounds pretty consistently in 6, 7, and 8. So you have to ask yourself, what is it about either the way the standards are being measured, or the instruction is, and how the instruction is being delivered, and how we measure proficiency at the classroom as well. So we have been looking at that, but the only, one of the things that I noted about the performance levels is that while that is an area of weakness, grade 5 particularly, that we look closely at, we did grow tremendously in that area from last year to this year, even though it still is a low point for us.
Right, and I'm just a little concerned about that. If you go back to slide 9 on your presentation. Yes, I'm always amazed you can find that. Well, I have no idea. I can't figure out which page. Is that still 23? I don't think so. Yes, 22. It's interesting to read the scores diagonally.
Yes.
So if you read the scores 2015 for grade 3, they got an 88. 2016, the same people got an 83. 2017, they got an 84. So it seems like there's some central tendencies within the grades that's coming over from grade to grade, even though as they get older. So I'm wondering if that suggests that particular grades should have some particular supports because they're having problems that are following them in the system. So, I don't know, it's just a question I would raise.
And so in looking at that myself, when our students tested on the very first year in 2015, for example, our grade 3 cohort came out of the gate very high, like across the state, one of the highest achieving grade levels in both ELA and math. And so if you follow that, and in mathematics specifically, you'll see it actually decrease in the next 2 years, which would be a concerning pattern. And I think what we're looking at, but yet across the grade, we've, from the first administration to the next, we're seeing a little bit of an improvement. But I'm hoping that what we'll see with that cohort that started, that when they get to the upper band, they will stabilize and go up. It is something that I agree, we've sat around and trying to find, where those patterns, and at this point, I'm looking at that vertical cohort, hoping that what we'll see is when it hits 6, that 69 in grade 5 this year will move up into, perhaps as the 2015 grade 5, which was a 64, went to a 76, that 69 will go to the high 70s,
Right.
is our hope.
Well,
Based on-
that
based
would
on
be
our
nice,
curriculum.
yeah.
Statistically, you would think it would happen.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's an issue with the students in that particular class that they need some extra support. So, I don't know, and so the question I would say is, it would be nice if you could tell me what plans we have in place to make sure that they make consistent improvements, because that's what we're all interested in, obviously.
Absolutely, and Donna spoke a little bit to that this assessment itself is one data point, and certainly we contrast this with their academic achievement over the course of a full school year. Are they continuing to make progress on their curricular assessments? Do they pass, or how is their performance on universal screenings, which indicate skills at that grade level? So we do account for other things, and I'm pretty confident that in that number that you'd say that other 31% of students who didn't make goal, that there are some that are receiving support right now, and others that we might feel are showing their achievement in other ways.
Okay. Well, for example, grade 4 mathematics was at 74, and then when they tested next year, they were at 63, and next year 67. So it seems like they came out of the box, were doing relatively well at grade 4, but not so good otherwise. So, all right, as long as you're thinking about the problem, that's what we need to address. Then one of the questions is, it seems as though that there are a relatively small number of students who are not doing well, who are not 3 or above in English language and mathematics. And I'm trying to figure out if there are overlaps. So is it the same student that's having a problem with English and math, or if it's different students? Because if it's the same person that's having a problem with English and math, that would seem to be someone that was sort of screaming out for extra assistance.
And certainly there's students in both of those categories that are, there are students who are counted for that are not meeting goal in both. And there are those who it's just one. And I think throughout all of the tiers of support that we offer, we are addressing those
Okay.
needs. Yeah.
Excellent, I appreciate that. What can we do as a Board of Education to support you more and to help you in this endeavor?
I think we appreciate the support we've had, and I truly believe that the interim assessments that have just come out from the state will help inform our practice a little bit better, because the data from Smarter Balance is kind of that broader. It's very hard to narrow it down. If you remember the CMT scores, they would be 24 areas. It's very broad here, so we're hoping that with the interims, we can give them at the same time we're kind of doing that instruction in class, and just use that as another data point to say, okay, half of the class missed this question, we need to go back and reteach. It also will help us to say, okay, we have 2 or 3 students that are struggling, let's pull them as a small group and work with them on this one concept. Or it could be the vocabulary that they're using in the assessment that we're not using in our instruction. So there are many variables. I think that will help us to look at and further analyze, our instruction and what we're doing for students.
Okay, will we get a follow-up report where you'll let us know how it's going?
Sure.
Excellent, thank you. I apologize for asking so many questions. Other people, Mr. Spivak?
Is it on now?
Maybe the light just isn't working.
So first, I appreciate including the advanced placement results within the presentation, because we haven't seen that before. And it sort of confirms some of the information that we've seen in the past, where Avon students have done extremely well on the AP exams. And if you look at the core subjects, meaning math, English, history, and science, most students, most of those were at 100% scoring 3 or above. But if you look at more data, which I was hoping we would have tonight, the percent of our students that are actually taking AP classes, especially those core classes, is lower than other districts. And we've seen that when we've seen college readiness staffs that have been put into the school rankings. So, you know, it confirms we have 91% scoring 3 and above, but I don't think we are allowing or encouraging enough students to take those AP classes. Now you said we've added econ, psychology, and English government, but we haven't increased the percentage that are taking the other classes. So I was hoping, to ask a question, if you can present to us at some point the percent of students that are taking, for example, grade 11 AP English in Avon versus the percent of students taking that same course in our neighboring districts or other Durg A and Durg B, so we can see where we're not having as high participation as other districts.
And the reason that wasn't included this evening was the fact that we would literally have to contact each district to do the Durg A and B we were able to get from the College Board. So that is information we can work on getting, but it was just the timing of doing that. So maybe we'll look and put that in that report when the high school administration does that report of AP, ECE as part of that, if that's okay. Okay.
I would just note that if we're hitting 100%, and we're hitting 100% on a lot, it means that some people who may not be capable of doing 100%, but capable of doing perfectly fine, may not be trying. So certainly we want to try and encourage that. Mrs. Zaroli, questions? Oh.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I wanted to just reiterate, I think that Jay is on point about, I think the culture of this board really is that we want to expand access for all kids to be trying all of these kinds of classes, really authentic opportunities for them. I had a question on the AP chart. It looks like, and I know that this doesn't have the current sitting class, some of these classes, it looks like there's only one student taking some of them. Am I misreading?
Those would be our virtual high school
Okay.
students that are taking the class. And I believe there's one student that took the course that lives in Avon but is not registered in the high school, because I was trying to figure out why we were one number off.
So anytime we see a small number, we can attribute that to...
Correct. Anything with a 1 or 2 would be the virtual high school, because we would not run a course with that enrollment.
Anything else, Mrs. Blaine? Mrs. Zaroli?
So taking a look at page 33 of our board package, percent of students by gender, by performance levels. This has been something that I've been fascinated with over the
I'm
last
sorry,
8 years.
which report are you in, because I didn't bring my packet over.
CMT science results.
CMT Science, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has fascinated me for the last 8 years. Just doesn't seem to... I'd like to see more of an improvement in that area where, especially in the advanced, there's a big difference, a big gap between the male and female. So I'd really like us to dig into why, what's going on. I mean, I know there's some natural, inherent traits that people like and don't like, but I also know we have great teachers that can help. And this has just been an area that's troubled me for 8 years.
Thank you, Mrs. Zaroli. Further questions? Thank you both very much. We appreciate your effort, and thank you for bringing this much data to us. I believe, yes, Donna, you are doing the primary instructional materials for review.
On page 48 in your packet,
I don't know where your mouse went.
Curriculum Professional Development Council met on October 26th, and during that meeting, the proposed instructional materials for grade 8 English Language Arts, 9-12 Mathematics, grades 3 and 8 in Social Studies, and grades K through 5 Science were presented. The council members reviewed the materials. They were given a presentation for each material that was there, and then they had received copies of the proposals, which you have in your packet, prior to the meeting to review. Then during the meeting, there is time for everyone on the council to actually look at the materials that are there and to follow up with who presented the materials if they have any questions. So each text received the required 2/3 approval required from the council under policy 6161 to move forward. So we are commencing the inspection period for the Board of Ed and public beginning November 22nd tomorrow. It will go for a 30-day period or till the next closest board meeting after that point in time. All of the materials are down in central office at the reception desk, so I just wanted to announce publicly that that review has been launched, or will be launched tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you very much. So if any member of the board, I know Mrs. Zaroli is usually pretty careful about looking over stuff, but any member of the board can do it, as can any member of the public. Questions? All right, hearing next, I believe Mrs. Mashaud, you're up next on financial report.
So probably the most notable items to talk about in that financial report, I didn't get a chance to share this with the finance subcommittee, but really kind of an uneventful month all in all, which is fine, truly.
We like uneventful.
True, and we're in the black, which is important.
And that's even more important.
There you go. But the most notable items, transactions that occurred during the month of October were two. The OPEB payment, which is the other post-employment benefits, that's for health insurance coverage for our retirees. The town of Avon, as many of you know, is very conservative and smart in their future planning for retirees, and they have developed accounts to save money to help offset the cost to the town directly for health insurance benefits once employees leave service and retirement age. So that total was $624,709 this year for the Board of Education. And secondly, another very important part of the Board of Education's obligation is its employer pension obligation. That was also sent out in October for $622,289. So those two very notable items, which go right around now, that would be the largest difference, you'd say.
Excellent. We're still 24.5% unencumbered so far.
We are.
All right. Mr. Shute.
Just for clarity, on page 90, can you just speak to what this budget transfer request refers to? I'm just curious. It talks about flu vaccine. I'm just curious.
Yes. When this was budgeted for last year, it was an accidental. She put it under her contracted services line, and I didn't catch it. It's really a supply. So we need to put it in the right place so that we can purchase it out of the right place.
So do we give flu vaccinations?
We do.
So
To
who
staff.
that request it, or is it just offered to everyone in an effort to keep people healthy?
It is. It's voluntary. It's offered to all faculty and staff for Avon.
So does this number reflect that everybody got it? Is there any way to be able to tell, or?
No, we don't
Okay.
ask for that information because it's personal, but
Okay.
this number reflects what she typically purchases on an annual basis.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? All right.
I had to ask, it's, 624K, is that pay as you go, or is that invested,
That-
in the OPEB plan?
That is invested in the OPEB plan. Yep, LPL Financial oversees that account.
Hold on, I just want to fix this for a second.
I'm sorry. LPL oversees financial account?
No, LPL Financial oversees that account.
Ah, oversees that account. Got it. It was like we're doing foreign stocks. Oh, my God.
Not yet.
All right. Thank you. All right. Sometimes the chairman gets concerned. Gina and Pattyfoot, proposed 2018-19 budget.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting starting from the beginning and then there. So Let's see, what page, right? Well, good evening again, and thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed budget for 2018-19. And I hope this works. Great. So we put together, and I wonder if I should put the lights out. You promise you won't go to sleep if I put the lights out? Thank you. So, well, it's kind of nice, you know, you get to see it a little better, I think. So the budget, when we look at it, I feel is really true to our mission. And you have a very strong and powerful mission statement, very student-focused, and enabled us as a team, a collaborative team, to consider it when we weighed each of the items that we looked at in each decision package. So when we looked at budget priorities, the first thing was to make sure that we meet the contractual obligations that we have to meet. And actually, we negotiated, or the board negotiated, 3 contracts, not 4. We are in current negotiations with one group, and in the spring, you should pick up another group that you need to negotiate with. We also tried to ensure that we provide high-quality instruction to improve student performance. We reassigned staff as needed, and we reduced the district's reliance on grants, especially the IDEA grant. We have a lot of staff in that grant, and if that grant erodes or if the funds go away, it would be a huge burden to the district. And also, we're leveraging district operational efficiencies. So this is what the budget increase looks like. The proposed budget is $57,478,605. The increase is, as you can see, $1,172,197, and it's a 2.08% increase over this year. I think that's a pretty reasonable budget increase, and you'll soon find out why. So what do we get for that money? We get to maintain all of the current positions in this system, which I think, after seeing what happened last year, I think is really commendable that we can do that. And we reassign personnel based on enrollment. So, for example, we will reduce a half team at Avon Middle School and reassign those 2 teachers to grade 6 at Thompson Brook, and reassigning the K-6 math coach and on special assignment to a K-6 enrichment teacher on special assignment. We provide funding for additional certified and non-certified positions, and when I put this up, it will look like a lot of positions, and it truly is. It actually is 7.6 positions, so I'll start at the very top. Increase business teacher at the high school, that's 0.4 based on enrollment. Increase English language arts at the high school, 0.2. Also add a special ed teacher at the high school, 1.0. Add a social worker, 0.5 at Avon Middle School and 0.5 at Thompson Brook. Add a STEM teacher, 0.5 at Roaring Brook and 0.5 at Pine Grove. Increase the work year for one of the assistant principals at the high school. I have to admit, I was very surprised to see that you have one assistant principal that works 12 months and one that works 10 months. There's a lot of work to be done during the summer. When most people go off and have their vacation, they should be getting ready to do the student handbook, ensure that the scheduling is done and schedules can be run and students have them in their hands well in advance of the opening of school. But you need personnel to do that. Increase the assistant principal at Thompson Brook. Right now, that person is working 0.6, and that's the only school that has a less than full-time assistant principal and a lot of staff to evaluate. Add a director of human resources. I think that when I look at all the things that are needed in this district, in particular employee handbooks, ensuring that all forms that staff need to have prior to the opening of school, the first days that they're back in terms of notices and that such things, I do think you have a need there, a pretty strong need. I know that currently that responsibility is shared by Ms. Michaud and by the superintendent. That can be overwhelming at best. And unfortunately, some things can slip through the cracks. Increase preschool for 3-year-olds, the paraeducators, so that the students attend 5 days a week. That's a 0.6 increase. And add a custodian 0.6 at Avon Middle School and also at the central office. Right now, whenever there are meetings or anything at night, we have to close up the central office. And for example, tonight, Dr. Meerman and I were trying to shut the door because the latch sometimes goes up, and we were wishing that Donna was at the central office because she has the height to close that off, to close that door. So we had to go inside and get a shovel, unfortunately. I didn't think you would accept that we were late because the door wouldn't close.
At the risk of being jocular, it is noted that Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman is very short and wears excessively high heels to make up for that. So we may have to buy you a pair of high heels.
Then I'm afraid.
Or stilts.
Well, then I'm afraid you'd have a workers' comp claim because I'm sure I would be less than gracious and fall off them. Provide funding for your district plan. This would be a great opportunity for you, the community, and your new superintendent and administration to engage on a new strategic plan. I believe your shelf life on your plan is just about expiring, and I do think that this would be very beneficial to the board, the staff, and the community to undertake a new strategic plan. Provide funding for 5.15 positions currently funded in the IDEA grant. And on one of the later slides, you'll see where some of the funding cannot be guaranteed, and I think you probably realize that. So my recommendation is that you gradually wean yourselves off wean the district off of your grants, and in particular this one, which is really heavily loaded with personnel. Provide makerspace opportunities for students K-12, and this would be for the STEM teacher. Remember, we talked about the part-time STEM teacher at Roaring Brook and Pine Grove. And we've put in the budget makerspace supplies for each of the schools, and this will be an area for students to use inquiry and collaboration in the science, technology, and engineering areas. Provide summer custodial help. I think over time you've lost some of your positions. I believe the maintainer position, and even the custodial union is very happy. They would be very happy because I meet with them just about every other month, and they had expressed that it was really hard to get things up and running during the summer, so they welcome this type of help. And to employ a board clerk, and this is really an hourly position, but I think it would be a lot better to, and this is just my recommendation, that you hire someone to oversee the agendas, to make sure they're consistent, and to also take the minutes at the meeting, have someone present to do the minutes, and then, send them out and process them as quickly as possible, not only for the board, but also for your standing committees. And then lastly, provide new textbooks, Chromebooks, and supplies for the K-12 makerspaces and for the K-6 Enrichment for All program. So that's what the 2.08% pretty much buys you. So this is a breakdown of the budget drivers. And you can see salaries and benefits consume 79.54% or close to 80%. Utilities, contracted services, special ed and magnet tuitions, supplies and equipment, all other, and that brings us to the 2.08%. What accounts for the request? Well, salaries, obviously. If you notice benefits, this is really broken. We're realizing this nice reduction primarily because of the good negotiations that were undertaken by the board, going to HSAs and high deductible. And the other factor would be the experience of our staff in terms of their, good health and possibly getting the flu vaccine. Tuition is going down slightly, and that's in special education. And you see where the other drivers are. It is a little small. I apologize for that. But I do have handouts for you afterwards and also your budget book. So basically, this is a summary of the general fund revenues. It's primarily driven by fees that you collect, either through your insurance or other fees that you establish. As you could see, the
team program, which was revenue for the mentors, for new educators or beginning educators in our system, that money has been wiped out. That would come from the state, and we're no longer receiving that money. These are your grant revenues. And even though Part B is going down slightly, we just never know with the federal grant whether or not it will erode completely. But it's so heavy with personnel that if you were to lose $100,000 or $150,000 of that grant, it would put a significant burden, I think, on the district, because these are required or essential positions. So the anticipated or projected revenue from the open choice attendance is $720,000, and that's how the money is allocated in the budget. So if anyone has any questions, this will be up on the website tomorrow. The budget will be up on the website, and also the email address will be active. For any questions or suggestions, we welcome the community's input on the budget. And really, this budget was a collaborative effort, and I have found Avon to be a wonderful place to work, a truly wonderful place to work, and I've had the opportunity to work with some fantastic people, very smart people, very dedicated people, and you see the value of teamwork. And one of my favorite quotes is from Andrew Carnegie. Teamwork is the ability to work together for a common vision, the ability to direct individual accomplishments toward organizational objectives. It is the fuel that enables common people to obtain uncommon results. And I think there was a lot of heavy lifting to put this budget together. I hope when you see the budget book, it's easy for you to understand. And I think that everyone in this room, the administrative team at the central office, as well as the principals, did a fine job. So I want to express a real huge thank you to the district leadership team. I see that Mr. Kimball is here. I want to thank all of the principals and all the staff members who helped develop the proposed budget. Thank you for your time and attention, and we can put the lights back on. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We always like seeing a low increase in the budget, particularly in light of current tax issues, but we always like to make sure that we cover everything. And I gather from your presentation that you think that this covers everything plus extra, because you've added quite a number of items to the budget.
Right, and I think because of, again, the medical account, we're realizing some nice benefits from that account. Doesn't happen too often. I don't think I've ever seen it in my career. So
we
hopefully-
bargained hard, and we knew it wasn't going to have immediate results, but it's nice to know that the planning worked.
Exactly.
Do we have questions for the interim superintendent? Mrs. Shue.
I just want to say thank you so much. I know this was a big task for you coming in, and I'm so grateful for the heart I can see in what you've offered to us. So I'm excited to look at it a little bit closer, but I'm very impressed with the number you came up with, and I'm so grateful. So
Well,
thank you.
we all came up with this number.
And I acknowledge that as well, because
Thank-
it definitely is a team effort, and I appreciate Mr. Kimball being here to witness it too. So
Right.
thank you for all of that hard work.
Thank you for thanking us.
Mrs. Blaya.
I just wanted to say thank you too. It was really an exciting budget to see what you're doing for students and what you're providing for the district and for all the planning that happened long before so of us even were part of this board. So to everybody really should share the credit in all that hard work. And I'm really excited and appreciative. Thank you.
I'm hoping you make it right to the end with that number, but I understand that many things happen along the way.
Well, actually, we've had the dubious distinction of once or twice having the board raise the budget.
Wow, that makes it even better.
There you go. Further questions? Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate the heavy lifting on this. Next item is the consent calendar. Do we have anyone that wants to remove any item? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Hearing none. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as submitted? All right, Mrs. Zaroli moves. Do I have a second? Mr. Burke seconded. All right, excellent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Old business, I think Mrs. Zaroli, they're both policy items. Why don't you do A and B?
All right, so, on page 105, we listened to the comments that were made at the last meeting, and the policy subcommittee discussed this in detail. So you can see the edits that we made to be responsive to the concern regarding that it might be misunderstood in terms of visiting any visitor to the school. And so we've added in there, you can see the referring to other policies to indicate that school volunteers are done in a total different manner, and to try to make clear that we're speaking towards visiting classrooms or programs versus just stopping in the office. That's not what we're speaking about. So hopefully this addresses the concerns that were raised at the last meeting.
That's for me, that language, I think speaks to what my broader concern was. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Would you
So-
entertain a motion?
Yes, I would.
Can we have a motion to approve policy 1250? All right, Mrs. Leah, and then Mr. Shute seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Okay, nice work by the committee. And then 9132, which, hold on, page 110. That's a little harder to understand what we edited, but what we did do to reflect discussions last time was in the Finance Committee. What we did was we added, let's see. So it had financial planning, capital budgeting, supervising the audit. What we added was, and considering alternative resource opportunities. The thought was, instead of naming each committee that formerly existed, which was regional services and alternative resources, that the term alternative resource considered anything alternatively. So it would also address regional services issues and anything new. So that was the adjustment that we made to the Finance Committee one. The rest were maintained. There was no other, we discussed it, but there were no other comments, so.
All right, couple of items on this one. One, that I would propose that we make this effective January 1st, so it affects the incoming board. Two, some people, one of them, have raised the question as to whether or not the audit committee should be separate. Does anyone wish to discuss the issue? Does anyone want there to be an example that we thought about it on the board level and just didn't take a position without discussing it?
I did bring that to you earlier. I guess my feeling is audit seems to be in its nature an independent piece of oversight to me. That's just why I wanted to kind of have that discussion. This was the best place for an audit is such a kind of a specialized independent item that we might want to keep that independent.
Well, historically, I can tell you in the private sector, audit committees are standalone and separate. There are very few boards of education with audit committees, but we're one of two, and the question is, should we maintain that or should we change it? Obviously, the policy committee has recommended this. I don't lightly want to do that, but that was a discussion in the committee, and I just want to make sure that we discuss further here. Does anyone else wish to comment? Mrs. Shute.
For me, not having a financial background or comfort level, it seems to make sense to have that incorporated into the Finance Committee, so I don't struggle with that. So I guess I just need a little more clarity on why that would be problematic. because it seems like the information from that audit would be beneficial to the people on the finance subcommittee for conversation. So does it just look different if you have more members participate? I don't fully understand the need to separate it out.
Well, Mrs. Zaroli, I believe you have a lot of experience with.
I do, but I also wanted to defer if the chair wanted to speak
No,
first.
go ahead.
Okay. So yes, I do have a great deal of experience as former chair of finance, former auditor, head of policy at a large company. And it is part of a finance chair's interests and desires to make sure they know the what's going on in the audit. And anyone I know that's interested in this subject would keep the hand on the pulse always with the audit. I read all the recommendation letters. I attended the Board of Finance meetings. I stayed on top of all the issues. So it was something that just fit right in with finance. Also, the other piece, as I looked at finances, we've gone from when I started, the meetings were lasting 2 to 3 hours and we got no answers, to the meetings are lasting 30 to 45 minutes and all the answers are done. And they actually were contemplating moving to every other month. So what this does with this change is it allows everything financial to be under one helm. The people that are presenting from the administrative office are the same people. So it brings it together, and in my mind, as a finance person, you want to know what's going on in the audit, so this way you make sure you're fully aware.
Jay?
Yes, I actually agree with everything that Kathy just said, and as the chair of the finance committee, I look at it as having lived through a situation where we did have those 2 or 3 hour meetings, and now we're meeting in less than an hour. But I also see the administration overlap, but also a lot of the committee members overlap between the two. So to have less meetings and more efficient meetings, to me, makes sense going forward. So I'm comfortable with it being part of finance audit.
Okay, I would just comment that often audit has a slightly different and sort of a check and balance on administration, but I hear you. Anyone else care to comment?
Maybe can you educate me when you say that in the private sector, it's a standalone committee, what's the benefit in the private sector of the independence of that?
Actually, I'd normally defer to Kathy Zaroli, but why don't I say something, and because she was part of the committee that does national standards for audits. But usually what you do is on an audit committee, and it's almost universal, I would say it's universal, that no one on the inside, no inside director would be on the audit committee. So it's all going to be independent people that are working with the auditors who are checking on the work of the employees. So therefore, you don't want any person whose work is being checked having influence on the people who are checking the work. So it's intended to be independent auditors, and therefore there's usually an independent audit committee of the board of disinterested people. So if for example, the chairman of the board is an employee, they would not normally be on the audit committee. Mrs. Zaroli?
No, that's correct. It's just, and then you look at our organization, it's public. We 9 are responsible for everything. So the distinction, and we're not employed by, so there's a whole different approach as to the point of the audit that from our perspective versus what's being done. Also, it's an audit for the town, and the auditors work with the Board of Finance more so than with the Board of Education. So with that distinction, those distinctions, that's why I think it does make sense to combine them and make them one committee.
Okay. I think Mr. Indemonico didn't say anything. Would you care to add anything, or are you happy?
No, I think the 2 things that come to mind in the discussion of what we just talked about is, number one, I know we talked about some numbers not too long ago. The recollection is the audit committee as it exists now really only met like once or twice last year.
Correct. It only meets probably 2 to 3 times a year.
So I think other thing that kind of struck me that we were talking about was the audit committee, again, talking private versus public sector.
Mhm.
The audit committee's job is really to perform an audit. It's
Correct.
To work with the auditors on the audit. So I think it's an important distinction for people to understand. The
Correct.
members aren't doing an audit.
Correct.
They're working with the outside auditors on.
Thank goodness, because trust me, I'm not an auditor. Thank
That sort
you.
of speaks to the distinction you brought up.
Yes.
In the outside world, you have separate distinct auditors because they're doing the audit.
Right.
It's different here.
And we do actually have separate and distinct auditors, just so I think everybody knows, but we are roughly 3/4, 80% of the town's budget. So even though it's officially a town audit, we're the lion's share, we wag the dog, as it were. And apparently Mrs. Michaud thinks that's funny.
The only other thing is, this is why Houston needs to be at meetings, because the policy committee discussed all of this in detail, and Houston missed that meeting. So we all were on board with keeping this. We definitely considered it. We discussed it. It was discussed thoroughly, just so you know.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the full board, which includes more than the policy committee, had discussed it so that no one will be surprised.
Well, I appreciate the input. I'm convinced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds good to me.
in light of that, may I have a motion to approve policy 9132 effective January 1, 2018? Mr. Burke moves. Do we have a second?
Sure, second.
All right, Mr. Indiamanico, second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, carries unanimously. Congratulations. All right, then we have new business. Budget transfer item. Is that you, Mrs. Michaud?
So, to be quite honest, apparently there was a little bit of a miscommunication on this one. I'm not quite sure what happened here. Clearly, it exceeds the $5,000 limit the board had given me authorization to process, even though it comes before you. So I couldn't process it, but really it's no different than any of the others. So it really shouldn't have been new business. I think it was just a misunderstanding as to where they go. So unless you have any questions about this, I'm more than happy to answer, but if we could please move along so we can put the POs in for graduation, it'd be awesome.
That would be lovely. Any discussion? All right, next time we'll just put it on the consent calendar. I think I may have done that, but there was a significant discussion between me and Shirley about what went on the consent calendar. Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, who wants credit for the second?
Jay can have it.
All right, Mr. Spivak has it. All right, Mr. Spivak seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Now we have student handbooks first read.
Okay, so on page 113, you will find a adjustment to the policy, which answers my 8-year question. When do I get to actually read it? Because it said that we read it, the handbooks, when they were changed, but we never did. So this is codifying current practice. That's it. And removes the responsibility from Board of Ed members that worried that they were supposed to be reading them.
Thank you. And since that's a first read, we don't do anything with it. We have an item C, I understand, that's been added to the agenda, but hasn't quite gotten to the town website, so I'm still considering it as added. I just looked. It's not on the town website.
But it came out via the town. It may be on the agenda, but you're saying these documents are? Came out on the town mailing of the new agenda.
Well, okay, that may be, but I can tell you when you go to the town website and you pull it up, it's the old agenda. But I'm treating it as though it's on the new agenda because we knew about it, we put it on our website.
Right.
I'm just noting that so that television people know. Okay.
Okay, so we are proposing 4 new courses for the 2018-19 school year. Again, these have gone through the Curriculum Professional Development Council. and you have their recommendations. The first course is Principle of Finance and Investing. This is a semester course. It will be an elective a CP course, or students can contract up for honors the same way they can do in any of our elective courses. This course came as a result as we're working to really build and expand the course offerings in the business department. As you know, we have personal finance as a graduation requirement now. The business department is currently under their curriculum review and revision, and as part of that work, they've really mapped out where they want to see that department grow. As part of that work, they also spoke with students that are currently enrolled in the business courses to see what courses they're interested in, because we don't want to add multiple courses and kind of spread that enrollment in many places and then nothing runs. So strategically to move the courses out, so the students had the highest interest in Principles of Finance and Investing. So that is the course that's being proposed. The second course being proposed is the ECE AP Physics with Calculus course. This course will replace our current AP Physics 1 and 2 course. So what this course is going to do, it's going to combine the AP Physics C mechanics curriculum that we currently offer with the ECE Physics with Calculus course at UConn. What we found is that students that are looking to major in physics or engineering really need a physics course that has calculus as part of it. So this course will meet that requirement for students looking to do that major in college. Students through this course will be prepared to take the AP exam. That won't change at all. And they can register for the UConn credits through ECE if they choose to do that. So both options are open for students. So this is just really a change in course and will be replacing that AP Physics 1 or 2. The third course, American Sign Language 4. This is the next and last level of sign language in that progression. We added Sign Language 3 last year. There are approximately 8 students that will move into American Sign Language 4, and we had quite a lengthy discussion at CPDC in terms of enrollments and numbers and courses running with those low enrollments. So that course will run as some of our other world languages do in that combined class. So Sign Language 3 and 4 will run consecutively or together, so that we're not putting in any more FTEs, but we're allowing the students to finish the 4th year of that course. And the final course is Heritage Spanish 2. We added Heritage Spanish 1 last year, so this one is the next level in that progression. This is for native speakers who speak the language fluently, but are very limited in the reading and writing of that language. So in 2 years, we get them up to the level that they can then move into that AP Language and Culture course if they choose to, because grammar and writing is not a strong emphasis of that particular curriculum, so students can meet in success. Again, that had the same conversation around the number of students enrolled in that course, and depending on enrollment would be that blend of Heritage 1, 2, the way they do many of our world languages at that higher level. And while these are numbered 1, 2, it's at that higher level because the students speak the language already. So those are the 4 courses that we are recommending and ask that you approve for the next year. Questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Spivak.
Yes, first I'm just going to say happy to see the new business course. As an investment advisor, I'm a big fan of adding any finance and investing courses, knowing that most people in the country don't have an understanding for that area, so it's very helpful for our students. I have a lot of questions along the physics course. If we are eliminating AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2, is that correct?
They currently are 2 courses, but they will be blended into this new course. So students can still take it as an AP Physics course. The content is still the same, but it will also, the second course of that, or the second semester of that, will bring in the physics with the calculus piece in it.
Okay, so the way our curriculum is set up right now, most students are not able to take AP Calculus as juniors when physics is offered at the high school. So the only students who are doing that are the ones who are in 8th grade who are taking geometry at the high school as 8th graders. So I feel like this is moving us in the opposite direction of where I think the board wants to go, and that this is reducing the number of students in the future that are going to be taking AP courses at Avon High School. So I think we've talked in the past, we wanted to increase and encourage and have those numbers of students taking AP courses larger than they have in the past. This, to me, is more the elite of the elite, and it's not going to allow more students to take AP Physics. It's going to reduce the number, just because they're not going to have the proper math. And I understand how you're saying, you know, it may be okay for students who are looking to go into physics or engineering, but we're going to have a much smaller percentage that can take AP Physics in high school.
Mrs. Russick, can you explain to us?
The science department did look into that based on the current enrollment in the class of students with the math for that course. So I hear what you're saying in terms of opening it for more, but the population that we're servicing right now in those courses really are ready for that calculus piece to be part of that physics course. And it may be that as the numbers come up, we explore running just one semester AP Physics course and running this one if the numbers allow for that.
Let me.
I don't understand why we continue to increase the offerings in DCE. I appreciate we're going to have a presentation at a future board meeting, but I see how it's not been part of any strategic plan in high school, and it's kind of been patched together where sometimes it's similar to an honors course, sometimes AP. We collapse levels, and now we're adding this DCE, which is kind of floating in different areas. And I think it creates a confusion for the students and not knowing what offerings they should take. I have just gone through this with my two oldest children when they were looking at schools, and they, like my daughter right now, is a senior at Avon High School. When she visited colleges, she was asking them whether she should be taking an ECE or an AP course. She was actually deciding for chemistry, ECE or AP. And almost all the schools that she talked to didn't even know what ECE was. When she explained it to them, they said that they would not accept a college credit unless you were taking it at a college. If you're taking it at your high school, you could not receive that credit, and went on the website to verify that. So I feel like we're going down a direction without everyone understanding what we're doing. At least the students, maybe the curriculum development team feels they've evaluated this, and I'm not comfortable with going down a direction which is going to even limit more students from being able to take AP Physics.
Well, I do have a question regarding Mrs. Russick's answer. It seemed as though physics was being offered as an AP without calculus first semester, and it was only the physics in the second semester that required calculus. Did I understand you correctly?
That was my understanding.
Okay. So if one wanted to take physics without calculus, and I happen to be philosophically a person who says that even arithmetically you can get a better result than you can with calculus, because calculus ignores certain things, but never mind, I'll stop talking. Could one take the first semester of AP Physics without calculus and still take an AP exam and be expected to do well on it?
That I would need to check with the department chair of the science department
Okay.
to give you an accurate answer, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Does anyone else have other questions?
Are we being asked to approve all four?
I think she originally planned on all four, but obviously we can do a lesser number if you want to. But that is.
My hope would be, I think I agree with Jay, I feel like I need maybe a little bit more time, a little bit more information about kind of holistically where this, what direction this path is putting us, when we look at the high school as a whole.
Right, when we're talking about the physics course. Okay. All right.
So I would propose the three.
So,
Move the three forward.
so,
Physics.
so should I take that as a motion? All right. Well, yeah, wait, Mrs. Shute has a question, although you can also debate motions, which is how the theory is supposed to be.
Just curious, in reading the comments on the Heritage Spanish, is it possible to move this down to the middle school to help those students prior to high school get some of that enrichment?
The department felt it really works well the way it is now to do that at that higher level, because it's at the higher level and then they move up into the AP, and we have other options in the middle school in terms of the French, the Mandarin.
Okay, so you don't feel like we're holding that process back at all?
I guess, well, to that point, it sounded like they could combine classes, so the enrollment is more effective, and we don't hire another teacher.
Correct.
So that would make them want to be together, which the only reason why I'm willing, because I don't want to see enrollments of 8. We have too many kids that aren't getting certain basics that I'm hearing about.
No, I'm in complete agreement with you, and that
Okay.
was a strong conversation
I like
with
that
the
you guys had
coordinators.
a decent dialogue about that. I'm impressed, so that's good to hear. I stand by my motion.
I just have one more question about both the language classes.
Sure.
When you were presenting it to us, I did have concerns about the low enrollment numbers. And I think what I heard was the expectation is that you won't need to hire new teachers or new staff to cover these schools.
Correct.
But then the proposals seem to read differently, like they both read like you're going to need to hire new staff.
They would like new staff, but we've had the conversation that we're not running classes with those
low
numbers. Correct.
So even though the proposals ask for or anticipate the need for new staff, you think we can do it without it?
Yes, and if you'll notice, it was not in the budget proposal for 18-19 because we feel we can do without it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll second Kathy's motion.
All right, further debate or discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Everything's unanimous
And
tonight.
then in the December meeting, I'll come back with the answers, or if the department coordinator is available to come and explain it in more detail, I will have him come with us.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate that. The chair has no ruminations this month, so we can skip over that. Mrs. Patty Foote.
Oh, thank you. The hiring report, it's a short one. Hiring 2 tutors, and we have the resignation of the district-wide courier.
Okay.
And enrollment, we went up 13 students, but we are certainly below what we started with in August. So you will see some fluctuation during the year.
All right, and are you going to be talking about Veterans Day?
Yes, I was really impressed with how Veterans Day is handled in the district. I think it's nice that students attend school. In my previous district, they still don't attend school on Veterans Day. And as our student rep reported, the students at the high school and the other schools were phenomenal. The programs were excellent. And I think Mrs. Rowley was at some of them. Peggy Rowe was at some of them. She was actually at all of them. We had 20 to 25 veterans from the VFW post. And our students, I was just so proud of the way the very little ones, all the way up to the students in high school, embraced our veterans. Some of our staff participated, and some of our parents. It really was outstanding, and I was just so proud of this school district and community.
And the veterans just are thrilled. They love it. I know at Thompson Brook they ate lunch with students, and they just really love it.
I'll just share a funny little story. So we were at the middle school, and I was told that we should, that we get a coach bus for the veterans, and so very wisely, someone in the business office came down to me and said, "Are you sure that we need a coach bus?" I said, "Absolutely. We need that coach bus." "Well, we could use the activity, but," I said, "we need the coach bus. These are our veterans." So anyhow, they finished the assembly at the middle school, and we were standing in the foyer, and the coach bus was there, and some veterans were missing, so I thought they had gone on the bus, and the other people hadn't boarded yet, the other veterans, and all of a sudden, the coach bus took off. So I was frantically on the phone, and I'm like, "The coach bus took off. You better make sure the coach bus comes back. I think they have half the veterans." Well, anyhow, I never heard such a thing. The coach bus had a 911 call and left. They didn't have any veterans. They just left. So fortunately, we had the activity bus, and Lewis came with the activity bus and did a wonderful job. So Lewis to the rescue in the activity bus. Happy ending.
Excellent. Okay, such other and further business that may be coming before the meeting. Hearing none, we'll move on to communications from board members. Hearing none. All right, reports from committees. Mr. Spivak.
You are no longer meeting as Alternative Resources Reading Services. You're attempting to left that are included in the finance
Okay, so no more meetings. Okay. Audit, Mrs. Young reports, and maybe Mrs. Michaud would rather do the report, that the field work is complete, but questions are coming in. Or is field work not complete? I notice you looking at me like I'm wrong.
I can't speak to the town side of the field work.
Well, no,
being
we don't care about the
complete.
town, we care about us.
But they completed our field work, though I have 4 questions that were asked on Friday that I said I would proceed with on Monday following the holiday because we had a budget to present this week. So they were fine with that because clearly they were still working on the town side. So.
Excellent, thank you. So our field work is complete. Mr. Burke, capital budget?
So we will not be meeting again, as you mentioned, we're going to consolidate. But Miles presented very greatly at the November 2nd Town Council meeting, got great reviews. There were some discussion around the middle school science labs, and Gina and I had a conversation afterwards, so we will continue to work on that when you guys are ready.
All right. Mrs. Blea, communications, school climate and culture.
Yes, well, we are actually canceling our meeting. That is Monday, because, and Houston and I have had discussions about this. Since our new committee, we're kind of morphing into, if that's the right word, we'll be starting in January. So we will put together a new date for December, and we'll put that on the website whenever we decide. And that will be our last meeting. Hopefully we can use that as a planning meeting for what we're going to start looking into as far as curriculum and professional practices. But I do want to say at the last meeting we held in Hartford, we were able to meet with one parent. Dreadful weather, it was a little bit terrifying to get there. And this parent just had really nice things to say about the communication that they've been getting. They feel very well informed. One of the things that they brought up with their students, and I would assume this would be for all students in the district, is at the high school, if you play sport after school, there's very often an hour gap. A lot of times coaches can't get here until 3:30 or 4, so the kids are kind of doing whatever from 2:30 to 3:30 or 4. And she was saying, wouldn't it be great if we had something like productive and amazing and like for them to be doing? So that was her suggestion, passing along. I kind of agree, because I don't know if the library's open, or I think we can talk about that.
I think someone also sent me a suggestion about having I think it was a mathematics club. So yes, I'm sure we can come up with something. All right, I'm sure the calculus is probably not, no. All right, so you're not going to have a chess club. Okay. Mr. Spivak, Finance Committee.
Nothing new to report than what you've already seen, and the next meeting is Tuesday, December 12th at noon.
All right. Mrs. Rowell was going to report on personnel, but I think we'll do that in executive session. Policy, Mrs. Rowley, anything more than what you've already reported?
Just a little bit. We'll be having, our meeting will be a special meeting next time because we were trying not to do 3 meetings in a row with budget coming up. So we're going to meet before the Monday night meeting. We're going to meet at 6. So right before the budget meeting. So we'll meet at 6 o'clock here, which is unusual. So it'll be here. Monday, December 4th. There's a budget meeting at 7, so we just decided we'd come right before that. So that will be here, and we're able to do a shortened meeting. You know me, I like to work us for 3 hours, but we really don't have a lot going on right now. The next set of policies that we normally would have tackled would be business, and it was budget, so we said we'd hold off, so it'll be now after the next year. And then the only other piece I'd like to relay is that we did discuss as a committee whether it makes sense for committees to contemplate having their meetings on Tuesday nights so that every board meeting, other than negotiations, which is always when needed, but every board meeting would be on a Tuesday night at 7, same time So that's something for you all to consider, but it was a thought that appealed to several of the committee members, so I'm passing that along. Thank you.
Excellent, all right. Let's see. Mrs. Shute, Board Representative to the Curriculum and Professional Development Council.
So it was another grateful day, October 26th, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. We were all in this room, and we discussed, I have the benefit, which I'm excited about, our new subcommittee. I get to witness staff present the new textbooks and talk about the new courses, but I'm the only board member there. So our new subcommittee will allow more board members to witness the excitement and the energy and bring the paper idea to life. It's really different when you see them speak about something they're passionate about. So we spent time on that, and Dr. Meerman did an excellent presentation talking a little bit more in depth about the SRBI process. How to identify certain behaviors, is primarily behaviors, wouldn't you agree, Kim? So identify certain behaviors that are happening in the classroom that may be disruptive. How do you take note of what you consider an actual disruption? And how do you as a teacher collect data on such things? So she was trying to give innovative concepts for teachers to be able to tally without it being disruptive to the learning process, and recognizing that this isn't something that has to happen on a daily basis. It's really meant to just take a moment at some point, could be 10 or 15 minutes, and have a way to bring that to the further process. So if I did you justice on that, she did a very fun way of it. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, but I think we still were able to proceed. And I think, in my mind, it was a good way to present the concepts to the group that's there, which is comprised of building administrators, teaching staff, heads of departments, so that they could get acclimated to the concept, so that when it went out to professional development, she had some help in the room to help navigate that conversation. So if I'm accurate on that, that is what we covered that day. So.
Excellent, thank you very much. Mr. Burke, Avon Board of Finance.
Board of Finance, when they last met, I think it was October, they discussed the state budget, which we were all relieved that we don't have to make up over $1 million, but there's still a hole of $360,000, which from the town manager's perspective, we're going to manage to it.
Just to let you know, in terms of the Board of Ed, the ECS funding was originally supposed to be $700,000. We budgeted for $0. We were told that we were restored to the tune of roughly $600,000, and now they're talking about putting a hold on roughly $85,000. So we still budgeted for $0. So if it's 600 or 500 that's to the plus, it's not going to create a problem for us. But certainly, I understand that even though they passed a budget, the state is having issues.
So I think one of the things that they mentioned was, next budget cycle, it's going to be a little bit of deja vu, not knowing what's going to take place. So the Board of Finance may be flying a little blind. Because you still have the intergovernmental revenues, you still got that pension that's unfunded. So a lot of what we experienced before is probably going to happen this time around. So just as we think about the process, that's kind of what we're going to have to face.
And we worry about whether or not Hartford will go broke.
We'll have all of us, right?
Yes, Mrs. Rowley.
Could you clarify when you say the ECS, we didn't budget and yet may get some, is when you say we, which we are we talking about? Because there's the Board of Ed that budgets, but I think the ECS is done just at the town.
ECS comes to the town. It doesn't necessarily remit to us, but my understanding is when we budgeted, we planned on a $0 number for that. That was my memory.
So I'm trying to be clear to the rest of the board that it's
Right.
not going to affect us, period.
Yes, it's not going to affect us, period. It may, in fact, if they come back and say, we'll give you a supplemental appropriation, might affect us positively, but we'd have to come up with a reason for doing that. Correct.
I just want to be clear.
Right. Apparently, ECS checks are not mailed to the Board of Education, qua Board of Education. They're mailed to the town, And my understanding, and Mrs. Michaud can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the checkbook is actually run through the town. Yep, so they write our checks for us. All right, Town Council, Mrs. Rell is absent. Who's the second for that?
I'm the backup. I'm certain I did not attend last time.
All right. Okay, Board of Rep to, Board Representative for the BOE to CREC, Mrs. Blea.
We had a really good meeting, a lot of budget discussions there as well, and the most interesting part of their meeting was that some of their employees, totally independent of actually CREC, had worked to use the old Tudors High School building as a support center for families arriving from Puerto Rico. And I'll send that to you, and maybe we put it up on our website, but they're still looking, they said they're getting full flights every Monday and Friday into Bradley, and these are families coming with nothing but a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. They don't have coats, they don't have anything winter, they have nothing. These wonderful volunteers that are correct volunteers are working this, they have state agencies coming in, and it's all volunteer. It was really moving to me to hear how many families, I think they had worked with 435 families in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. So I don't know if you have any interest in doing a drive. That was a suggestion that they were really hoping for, do get a couple of items in a crop. That's really helpful, but it was really neat to see what they're doing.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we're at that point with further communications from the public. Would the public like to say anything? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right, then we have an executive session. And so may I say that we're going into executive session by unanimous consent at 8:42. Yes, I thank our cameraman. Thank you very much. And we will adjourn so everybody can leave and our cameraman can unpack.